Good morning. We're continuing our theme of riding the waves and overcoming fear. And today I'd like to think about that feeling of being overwhelmed. This year has been very unexpected and very unprecedented. And there's been a huge sense of loss for many of us. Loss of structure, routine and things to look forward to, cancelled events, a sense of loss of financial security, health, a loss of life around us. And on top of that, we're bombarded with information and news and opinions and criticism, and it can all feel very overwhelming. It can be very hard to look forward with joy and with hope. But we're not alone in those feelings. David in the Psalms also talks about being overwhelmed. And I'd like to think about a few verses from Psalm 61, which says, "Hear my cry, O Lord, attend to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." I'm quite a visual person. When I think about being overwhelmed, I imagine being lost in this very thick, dark, dense forest where you can't quite see where the source of light is or find the path back into the sunshine and the open space. And it can feel like that in our minds sometimes, and we have all these thoughts swirling around, that it's hard to see the light and the hope. But we're not alone in that. And David in this psalm talks about being in that place, but he cries out to God in that feeling. And I love the Psalms because David, the king, who we know as a man after God's own heart, that same David who was a shepherd boy, who told off his brothers and the king for not having enough trust in God in the face of Goliath. But this David in the Psalms is a very vulnerable David, and he's very honest and real about his feelings, the feeling of despair, and not sure about what his future holds. But in these verses here, he calls out to God and he says, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." I love the bit that says "lead me." That shows us that we don't have to get out of these feelings by ourselves. We may feel overwhelmed by ourselves, but we can call to God to lead us out, to take us by the hand and lead us down the right path out of that dark forest. And he talks about leading us to the rock. Well, a rock is a place of stability. A rock doesn't move, and God as our rock is our really sure foundation, and we can really rely on him. So when David's asking God to lead him to that rock, it's leading to that place of knowing that we have a sure future, a secure future with God. And then he talks about that place being higher than I. So it's higher than our thought pattern, higher than the situation around us, higher than our own feelings. It reminds me of that time Jesus goes up the mountain and leaves behind all the crowds and his disciples, and he goes up and to be with his Father and just pray with his Father. And David is having a similar thought in this psalm where he's saying, "Lead me to that place that's higher than I. Lead me to be in your presence." And it's in the presence of God that we find that peace that passes all understanding, that we find the joy that gives us hope for the future. And so I hope for you today that you can also pray this prayer, where in those times of feeling overwhelmed and fearful of the future, we can call out to God and say, "Lead me to that rock that's higher than I. Take me to that place with you, Father God, where we can have that peace, that joy, and that hope for the future." Have a good day.